Hey guys, welcome back to another evening in the Stormcave, where stories live and breathe and where family memories centered around sharing those stories together are cherished. I'm your host, Grant Walker, and I'm here with my co-host, Janelle Schmidt, and tonight we have a really special guest that we're really excited to get talking to. Janelle, how you doing? And then go ahead and introduce our guest for us.
I'm doing pretty well, and I'm excited to have Andrew Swearingen with us. Andrew has, I've seen your name a lot. I feel like I've been following you. You've been following me for many years. I have no idea. I know you're in Realm Makers, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I was actually that's funny you say that, because I was even just today, I was like, "Have I met Janelle in person?" I feel like surely we have been at a conference at the same time. So we have been in a room together at some point along with several hundred other people. But and we've interacted some through this and we've helped, help do a promotion for each other's books. But I'm like, I don't know if, and I've listened to the podcast. So like you've been in my head weirdly.
Uh-huh.
I could have chosen far better ways to express that point, but it's like, like, yeah, I don't think we've met in person. So at some point we'll have to make that happen officially. But yeah, but happy to be welcomed into your guys' cave here. It's it feels snug like a hoodie, which it's warm. It's too hot for a hoodie outside right now. So it's like, kind of sitting under here under like a little blanket for it, like just sitting here chatting. I feel very welcomed.
Oh, good. Well, that's good. And yeah, when you reached out and were interested in being on the podcast, I was like, okay, I know your name, and I know that I've seen you online a lot, and we've interacted. I think we've commented on the same posts and things, so you're very familiar. And I was like, I don't think I've read anything that Andrew has written. So then I went and I looked you up, and I realized your debut novel just came out. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, literally, this is the 2nd or so of June, and yeah, my first novel, Lord of Winter, came out back on April 1st, which is just hilarious, and I kept thinking, like, is this gonna be, like, a joke of some sort or another? But nope, it actually did come out. It wasn't some sort of long con there, so, um, but yeah, Lord of Winter just came out just for the first time, and it's been a long time coming.
Very cool. So, can you just kind of maybe tell us a little bit about your book? And we're gonna have a conversation about movies here in a minute, but since we're talking about your book right now, can you tell us a little bit about maybe the what the story is about and kind of how it came to be?
Absolutely. So, first and foremost, so this is the title, like I said, is Lord of Winter, and it is actually a collaboration with Jill Williamson, who is the author of the Blood of Kings trilogy. And this is a standalone story that takes place after her 3 books, the original trilogy. I'm just gonna slip into Star Wars terminology with this because that's how my brain processes this. You have her, the original trilogy of books, and then mine is part of a series of books that are standalone stories that take place after that. And so we kind of take secondary characters from the original books that were an important part, but but what's like, let's take some time and tell their stories here. So my story follows one of the lords of one of the far northern cities who, he's returning home and finds that his city is in a bit of chaos because he has a cousin who has been released from prison. He was a bad dude and he should not have gotten out of prison, but he is. And now Eric, my hero, has to deal with that. But he's a warrior, but he can't just go take the guy out. He has to be a lord in that process, and he has to act like a lord. And so it's him wrestling with that. It's him wrestling with coming home and trying to, relearn how to be a father and a husband to his family, and figuring out all that dynamics and stuff like that. So I have always thought of it as high fantasy or epic fantasy. There is probably quite a bit of, you could probably call it romantasy because there is a heavy romance element with him and his wife as they reconnect with that. There's some strong Viking vibes there because he's a buff, northern man, and it's the frozen north as they call it, and they have their own gruff ways of doing things. And so there's a lot of stuff that's in there, and it was so much fun to develop this story and this world with Jill. I've been a fan of her books for such a long time, and so it was just neat getting to partner with her with that, and hear her ideas, but then come in with my own ideas with that. And the story is very much, that it's the story that I came up with, under Jill's guidance. um and I think together we've come up with something that I think is really, really cool, really, really proud of it. And mine is not the only one. I mentioned it's part of a series. This is what's called the Blood of Kings Legends series. And so there's a book upcoming soon. I'm not sure when this will release, so it may be out by then, but there's another book by Kelly Fernlake that's going to be called Lady of Shadows that's going to come out, and then another one by my friend Nikki Florica that's going to come out in August or September, and I should have those dates off the top of my head, but I don't. But these are all like, it's a broad series that each one is a standalone novel, so you could just pick up Lord of Winter and read it. But if you read all of them together, it makes this big tapestry of all the things that are happening in this world, in the post-war times after the series has ended. I made the Star Wars reference earlier. I feel like it's very much like in the way that like you have like Star Wars, the original trilogy, and then you have like the Mandalorian that is like in that world, but it's not a sequel, right? It's like it's a continuation of that. It's very similar to that, where it's not part four, it is a new series, but in the same world and using the same tone and characters and all that.
Andrew,
That is really cool.
I was gonna say that sounds awesome. I have a couple of questions. I guess the first question would be, one of the questions I love to ask authors is, I mean, to me, it seems apparent that you have a love for stories, and I can even just see in the background some of the elements back there that tell me maybe some of the kinds of stories that you get excited about. So, one of the questions I always love to ask is, how did you go from loving to take stories in to just saying, "Man, like that's not enough. I have stories that I want to share." And then I would be curious, kind of the follow up to that would be, how did this partnership come about? And is this a story that you had in your mind from reading this series, or that you really want to dive into this specific story? I'm just curious how that partnership worked, and how that story started to come to the point to where it's like, okay, yeah, I've got to write this story.
Yeah, yeah. Man, going back to like the first stories, I think the first thing I put pen to paper with was probably seventh grade or so. I mean, and I should also say I'm gonna say that, and then of course I'm gonna take a step further back. Like, I feel like I don't know. I feel like we all kind of did this as kids. We take our action figures and we're playing and we're creating and weaving all sorts of big stories. And I don't know. In my mind, retroactively, I feel like I was always weaving some kind of tale or another. And maybe it's something like when everyone else started playing sports, I was just like, but no, I think these things are still cool. As demonstrated by the Star Wars action figures on the shelf behind me here. But the first story I put to paper was maybe like seventh grade or so, and it was actually after the first prequel Star Wars film had come out, and it sparked something in my brain of like, I ought to sit down and write some of this. I was always playing with Star Wars stuff, and I was like, I need to like write something. I don't think I ever finished it, but it was like, my own Star Wars story. And then it was like, well, they're never gonna make a Star Wars Episode 7, so why am I trying to do this? Little did I know at the time. So then I was like, well, I need to write my own original, space epic of my own Star Wars type story. And then I started, and I was like, well, what about like a fantasy movie or something like that? We'll talk some more about this later, but like I'd watch like Braveheart and movies like Willow and then Lord of the Rings. And so that kind of put me on a fantasy kick. And it just from then on, like, whether I was actively writing or not, my brain was weaving a story or two or 12 at a time, just constantly coming up with ideas and stuff like this. And I think the spark was always there, but like seeing and reading and reading those other books and watching those other movies, that was sort of that really nurtured that and blew it into something bigger that I'm still I'm still here now, many years later, unpacking that. So as far as the process with getting involved with writing new stories, with the Blood of Kings series, that actually goes back to, oh golly, probably 2-3 years ago or so. It's all through a publisher called Sunrise Publishing, and they specifically, their model is taking series that are completed, that are finished, and though, those authors taking on new unpublished authors to write new stories, but within that same story world. Often, their model had mostly been based in the romance genre or inspirational sort of things. And so it would take, one cute romance story that was set in a cute small town, and then it's like, okay, well, let's take this, the next step further, or something about firefighters and their world and all that. And then, okay, well, what about the firefighters in the next state over? What, that we know about the guys in Montana, what about the guys in Idaho, sort of thing. And then Jill announced that she was going to be writing new books in the Blood of Kings series, which I was just excited about because, again, I'm a fan. And then it was announced, oh no, these are books that are going to be, the process is going to be opened to unpublished authors to write a story with Jill. And I was at an inflection point. I'd had something I'd been trying to pitch for a while. The wheels were just kind of spinning, and I needed to start over. And that was around the time that I heard about this, and I thought, this is too good of a thing to pass up. I kind of put all my other potential projects on hold, and I'm like, let's chase after this with all we've got. And we did what was called an audition. You presented your story idea based on the other books, and you basically just a story idea, a writing sample, and just what you think you could do with this. And I brought up my idea for Sir Eric in the books. He's Lord Eric in my book, and was like, let's okay. And that was actually I presented two ideas. One was about, it was a different character in the books, and then this one with Eric was like, oh yeah, that's a cool idea. I'll throw something together, and I'll just throw this one out there too. And the second one ended up being the one getting selected. So it was just sort of okay, let's take the chance here. And so then it's been a process of working on the book with Jill, and kind of working collaboratively with Kelly and Nikki, the other authors, and just, you know, working to make these stories all work really, really well. Even though they are standalone, we still want to make sure that they're consistent, and like, the better each book is, the better it is for all of us. So there's a lot of collaborating and fact checking. It's a fantasy world, and so there's a lot of like, okay, wait, can I have this character? Can he come into my book, or is he dead now? And double checking, and it's all noble families, and so they're all like cousins and half related to each other, and so keeping track of who's cousins with who and all that. So it's been a process, but it's been a lot of fun to work on it. And now we're at the point where these books are actually finally starting to come out, and it's quite a bit of fun to share that.
Yeah, that's awesome. How long, like, went from the audition, I guess, as you would say,
Mhm.
to the book being released? When did this process start?
Think it was like fall of 22, I think. Yeah, because I remember they announced it on a Zoom chat, and I was on vacation, so I was like in the hotel lobby on my laptop trying to like watch the replay of the video when when Jill announced what the next Blood of Kings books were going to look like. And then I think by Christmas I knew that my story had been selected. And then we did a writer's retreat. All of us got together in Florida, and each day we kind of broke each of our stories, like, break down like the outline for it. And then it was, first draft was most of 2023, and then 2024 was most of the editing and the revising. And then, so I think by like Christmas of, I'm getting my timelines. I'm crossing the streams here a little bit. I'm getting my timelines blurry, but by Christmas of 24, the book was pretty well set, and then it was just, the details of getting it out there. And so all of our books in this series will launch within the 1 year. So there's no like, waiting forever and ever for the next book. It's like you're gonna have, for fans of Jill's work, or anybody who discovers us this year, it's like you're going to have 4 brand new books in that series you can read this year. And whether you're a fan of books, physical books or ebooks or even audio, that was a lot of fun getting to like listen to the narrators as they were bringing these characters to life. Like that was a goosebumps moment for me, like getting to listen to these two narrators who did just such a great job with the story, bring that about. So yeah, so from initial start, it was like 2.5 years to get this book out there into the world.
Yeah, that's amazing. I just yeah, congratulations. That's a lot of work. Did you enjoy that process? I'm sure there's ups and downs and parts of the process that you love and go back. Was that fun working in a collaboration to have a world that to work to you have a little bit of that assistance of, oh man, like, you know, knowing the history or these things to be able to ask those questions of, is this guy related to anybody? Is that the kind of thing, like, did you enjoy the collaborative part of that?
Oh yeah, I would say the collaboration was probably the most fun part of it because it just anytime you're working on something, anytime you're writing, it is such a solitary process, and it can, for a long time it can feel like it's just a Word document on your computer, and that's as far as it goes. But having other people to reach out to and just touch base with and kind of get some other perspective on that helped so much. And even just, I mean, the most fun was the writers retreat because there we're all there in the same room, and you can just kind of bandy ideas back and forth and see like, oh, what about this, or what about this person, what's and sometimes we would need to get like, Jill is her day job is as a teacher, and sometimes she would have to be the teacher who would like get us back on track because we were like, going on also, and it's like, well, hold on, we have to, we this thing has a certain length. We can't turn this one book into a trilogy. We've got to like curtail this at some point. So the collaboration was a lot of fun, and also just the support. Jill is, if I can brag on her for a little bit, on top of being a teacher, she's just a naturally supportive person. Like, she was such a great cheerleader through this. And it's tough writing a first draft with a deadline. I don't think I ever thought about that, but like, usually you have your book that you've written, and then you're presenting it to a publisher, and then it's the editing, which is, no mean feat by any means, but but you've lived in that world, you've steeped in that world, you've probably done a couple passes on it before you get it to a publisher. Here it's you get done with the first draft and then immediately turn back around and start doing your own revisions again, and it is a pretty constant and at times relentless sort of process. That was probably the harder parts of it, but again, that's what made it so helpful to have my other authors on the project where we could work together and and kind of lift each other's spirits up a little bit.
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
a what a neat way to I mean, I feel like the more I get into the publishing, industry and indie publishing and all of that, like, I feel like everywhere I look, people are finding ways to make it a much more collaborative effort, a much more social effort, which is cool because, you've got this, like, picture of the, introverted indie author in their basement, and they don't see the light of day or people, and so it's neat to hear about these other projects where people are collaborating and where it is that kind of thing, and what a neat way to get started, to to have that support structure right there. That's pretty cool.
The question I have, and this is for both of you guys, Janelle, you and Andrew. Now that you have released this book, and whenever you have a project like this, especially writing, I feel like I've always felt like, in a way, you guys have to know a little bit what Olympic athletes feel like because you're putting in all of this work. And a lot of times, you know, your audience, maybe they know that it's coming, or maybe they don't. Maybe it's just, you're working kind of in that solitary place, which I think is gotta be really hard. And what is that like when you finally take your story that you've spent so much time with and, all of the little details, and it's April 1st and it's time to set it free into the world? Is that exciting, terrifying, relieving? Is it, man, now you've got all these ideas to go right into the next thing? Or is it like, oh, I just need to take a nap? Janelle, go ahead. You start us off, but I would be
Oh,
curious
oh,
what you
me.
guys feel like
Okay.
about, yeah, just what is that end date of it, published date? What does that feel like?
Yeah, well, for me, it's been a little weird lately because I've been working on the books that have been coming out from the Kickstarter, and so for me, the release date isn't really all that exciting because all of my Kickstarter backers get everything before the release date, so the people who are really excited about these stories are getting them weeks to months before the actual release date. So for me, the release date is kind of almost a letdown lately, like, just kind of a, "Oh, and now it's out there."
Is that
And now I got to work on the next one, so
yeah, is that specific to the Kickstarter formula?
it could be. I feel like I don't feel like it's that different though. I mean, and some of it is just it kind of depends on the story. Like with An Echo of the Fae, I was very excited about that. And then the week before it came out, we found out that my husband had been laid off. So that that kind of put a damper on things. I feel like the most exciting release probably was either the first one or when we were doing Steel Tomorrow, because again, that was more of a collaborative effort. We all worked on our own books, but it was a 9 author series of standalones.
Yeah,
So
no,
that one
and
was a little bit less of a letdown, I think.
well, that was a question I had. I think I'll get the movies wrong, but I think when Steven Spielberg shot Jurassic Park, by the time Jurassic Park hit theaters, he was already off on location shooting, I don't know, Close Encounters or something else. That might have been before, I'm not sure. But so he's almost like, oh yeah, I remember I did that movie. So Andrew, how about you for you? That April 1st date, how was that?
No, I'll definitely echo it. What Sorry, I said echo and my brain automatically wanted to like come up with some Echo of the Fae pun there, and it didn't come to me. So
Hey,
Yeah.
I like the inadvertent plug there, so that's awesome.
That's awesome.
no, I remember Jill like messaging me on release day saying this day's gonna feel a little bit weird because like it's gonna be a lot of on the day of, it's a lot of commenting on social media. And that's kind of it because a lot of the stuff that you are really amped about, whether that be reviews or like seeing numbers on how many people are purchasing the book, a lot of that comes way downstream. And so it's sort of this, you wake up and it's like, oh yeah, it's released, you almost and I further making it weird for me is so my day job, I own a landscaping business, and so April is like that's our busy time, so it's like okay, release day, but I've also got this huge work list of things to do because it's spring and it never stops. So it was this weird like eh, yeah, it was this weird mishmash of emotions and feelings and things, and it kind of took a minute to it took a minute for it to really settle in. Like it wasn't really till friends of mine started texting me pictures of their copies of Lord of Winter that it was like, oh, okay, okay, someone's actually reading this thing. And then and yeah, at that point you have put so much time in and so much work in that you do kind of have this sort of gasp of I think you asked like, all right, I think Grant, you asked, are you excited or do you feel like you need to take a nap? And my answer would have been yes. Just all of the above.
Oh, that's
Yes.
awesome. That's awesome. Well,
Oh.
congratulations again. That is super exciting, and I hope that we can kind of weave some more of the themes in there. I'm curious because one of the things that we want to talk about tonight is this idea of dad movies. Uh, and the way I kind of interpreted that is movies that as a dad that I can't wait to share with my kids, but that for any number of reasons I either want to wait until mom's not home, either because it's just not her kind of movie, or because I'm not sure she would approve. And but also thinking of like, okay, what were those movies that got shared with us growing up? But one of the things that you wrote when we were setting this chat up was that theme or the themes of fatherhood kind of go hand in hand with the story Lord of Winter. So I'm curious as we go if any of these movies bring up topics. I would love to hear how exactly that relates to the story that you have written. Let's dive into that topic. These would be dad movies. And maybe Andrew, maybe you can, if I have misrepresented what it is exactly we're talking about, let me know. You might be like, no,
I
I was talking about movies with dads.
Well, actually, a dad movie is defined as no, you're good. I've thought about it, and like in reality, the simplest version is like, I mean, I hate to lead off with just something like, well, it could be anything, but like genuinely it could. Like if your dad was one who would sit down with you and watch like, I don't know, Rambo and Top Gun and, I don't know, Die Hard's probably a little early, maybe it's the TV edit of Die Hard. Um, those are dad movies then, or if your dad would sit down with you with like Monty Python and Mel Brooks movies and very slapstick comedy. It's like, yeah, absolutely. Like the specific movies are like less important as much as it is like there's something about like the invitation out of, maybe a like a PG Disney, little kid film into something that's a little bit more grown up, a little bit more textured, maybe a little bit more unsafe, something where it's like, ooh, oh, like maybe your eyes get covered at some point with it, but there's an invitation with that. And at least with my own experience, the movies that I would say were dad films to me, there was always something of like, my dad reliving the movies that he saw when he was high school, young adult age, and, really wanting to sit down with me with like Guns of Navarone or Bridge on the River Kwai or something like that. Just, just some, just stuff from his era that's like, let me show you this whole other thing of that. You were talking about the themes of fatherhood with Lord of Winter, and I actually dedicated Lord of Winter to my father. He sadly passed away, some years ago now. I actually kind of got a twofer out of it because I dedicated the book to him, and it was, to Dad. I think you would have loved this book. But I also mentioned him in the acknowledgments, and I said, "Thank you, Dad, for teaching me to love movies where the good guys win," because that was always his thing when I would come home from a movie or I'd finish watching a movie in the den or something. And he's like, "Well, did the good guys win?" And that was, as a teenager, I kind of rolled my eyes at it, but it's like that really is a good barometer for certain types of films. There's plenty of films where the good guys don't win, and you're kind of left with this like, you know, for better or for worse, kind of a good film, this feeling. And sometimes that's intentional and that can be good, but you know, I would say more often than not in a dad movie, the good guys win. It's a it's a yay raw like hero moment sort of at the end there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, especially nowadays, it feels like were there good guys in the movie, or were they just the
Hmm.
lesser of two evils? The
Hmm.
less bad guys won. So I'm curious, Janelle, for you and Andrew both, and Janelle, maybe you could start us off. And you mentioned a couple, and I was actually really excited because Bridge over the River Kwai was actually on my very long list.
Oh my word! You said
Yeah.
it was long, but gosh.
Yeah, I was just going through it, and I was like, I want to make sure that I have some options.
This is
We
like
won't we won't talk about all of them.
dad showing up with the list of all 242 Gordon Lightfoot songs.
Yeah, all of them, all of them. So I'm curious. I want to hear some of the movies that you grew up with, and then what would kind of round out, and again, this won't be exhaustive because because the list would be too long. But I am. So Janelle, kind of lead us off. You were ahead of us in some ways. Andrew, you might have heard us joke about this in the past, but I've noticed this is kind of starting a little trend with my kids too, where, you know, my oldest daughter grew up with Daniel Tiger, and then my next boy, 2 years younger, he grew up with PJ Masks, and my third son, is growing up with Jurassic Park because we can't wait anymore. But Janelle, you being the oldest,
Mhm.
I do remember, and I don't know if this is true or not. I remember, at a certain age, Janelle was allowed to stay up, I think, for 1 extra hour at night, and, me and my brother's room was upstairs, and I was convinced that that's when the most amazing things happened and that we were missing out. And every once in a while, I'd sneak down the stairwell just to try to hear what you guys were listening to or watching. But I'm sure a lot of the movies, I'm sure we just were right there when they got introduced. But what do you think, or what are some of your memories of movies that you would kind of put in this category of movies that maybe felt a little dangerous?
Well, it's really funny. I don't remember getting to stay up an hour later, and I'm
You
guessing that
did.
whatever it was I did, I was probably just
Siblings never
dreaming.
remember that stuff. I'm the youngest of four. I'm right there with you, Grant.
See, I know. It's all about the younger siblings have an acute sense of justice,
Oh,
believe me.
yes. Yes.
Whether it
Um,
comes to bedtimes or how large the scoops of ice cream are.
well, I would say that so I have at least two stories, but we can go back and forth a little bit. So I'm gonna tell the first one and then we can come back around to me later. But one of the first like real like dad movies I remember our dad introducing us to was and I don't know where our mom was, but she wasn't home. Sometimes like our dad would send her to like a hotel and be like, just get out. And I will take care of the children and everything. And it's wonderful. And Yeah, that does sound wonderful.
I was gonna say, as a child, we were like, "Mom's missing out on all this fun." As an adult, I'm like, "Man, that sounds fantastic."
I just wish somebody would tell me they'd take care of everything and I can just go for the weekend. It'd be great. Yeah, but as kids, like we were like, "Oh my goodness, like mom is missing out on this." And so this one was the scariest thing I had ever seen up until that moment. I don't even know if Evan was born yet, Grant, for this one. So I was probably maybe 6, possibly maybe he was a little bit younger, like 1 or 2, and our dad brought home the movie Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein,
Yes, yes.
which
It
was
was terrifying.
to date the scariest movie I had ever seen in my life, and I just have this memory of you and me, Grant, like, behind the couch,
I don't
like,
think we understood that it was a
crying
comedy.
as we were so
And I
scared.
think I think dad was so tickled by the fact that we didn't get that, that he wasn't gonna let us know, like, "Hey, this is all for laughs."
No,
Uh,
but I also distinctly remember that he was sitting the way he does in front of the couch, right, with his feet stretched out and crossed, and he was dying of laughter the whole time, and we did not understand
"What
why
is
it was
wrong
so
with you?"
funny or what he was laughing at. Now I know he was laughing at us, but
Yes, I also can vouch for the fact that, that being the movie that we watched, mom would not have been disappointed with the missing
no.
out. That's awesome, that's awesome. Andrew, what about you? What's a movie or some movies that you can remember from that?
I'm trying to go to like early childhood stuff, and it's funny you talk about the I forget the sequence you mentioned, but the Daniel Tiger, PJ Masks, Jurassic Park thing, because I definitely had some of that. Being the youngest and the youngest by a fair amount. Like there's 6 years between me and my closest sibling, and then 10 and 13 years between the older two siblings, my two brothers. And so there were definitely like I realized at some point in high school, I was watching Total Recall, and I realized, I'm like, "Why do parts of this feel familiar?" And I, like, had a fleeting memory back to, golly, I'm terrified to think how old I was at how young I was at that point to have, like, but I think everyone else was up watching, the movie night. This was probably back in the days when you would rent a VCR, and, it was just, "Well, we've got this VCR for a weekend, so we're just gonna watch movies," and the 3-year-old just came down because he wanted mom, so, we're not we're just gonna keep it on there, but the more specific thing I remember from that, and this fits well with the theme, is Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Because I think we all went out to go see that, all 6 of us, in the movie theater. I grew up in like central Illinois, and the closest movie theater to us was literally in Iowa. So this little cruddy movie theater in Keokuk, Iowa, and the that still remains one of my favorite movies. I'll never say a bad thing about it, but to like a 4-year-old, the witch in that movie scared the pants off me. And I remember just hiding on the floor, and like for like half the movie, just like staying there, like, because like picking at gum on the floor, just because I was like, I don't want to watch, I don't want to.
Oh,
I wasn't like in peak terror the whole time, but I was just like, if she's on the screen, I'm not looking."
yeah.
So, but again, that's got all of the great, I think this is another thing that a lot of it's not necessary, but a lot of dad movies have like faults, things that are not perfect about them. And I just said I'll never say a bad thing about it, but I mean, Kevin Costner's wandering accent in that, a lot of the hokey, there is some camp, we'll call it, to that movie, but it's also, I mean, it's a great legend. It's a great retelling of that. It was my first Alan Rickman movie, so it will, I mean, if nothing else, it gave me that, Um, but yeah, if my son he's 4 now, he's about to turn 5, and yeah, he's not gonna watch that one for a bit, probably. Even if I was like, "Eh, he's okay with it." My wife would certainly not sign off on it.
But isn't that was and that's one of the things we talked about, because 'cause isn't it hard to because you do, like I said, you have these lists of things that you want to share with your kids, but you also know, okay, part of being a responsible dad is knowing when the time is right. I'm thinking of, Janelle talking about that movie, Abbott and Costello being the scariest movie we'd seen up to that point, and it was. But then I remember some like benchmark movies. I remember because my dad would sometimes around, sometimes around the campfire at night, he would tell stories, and we would find out later that he was just retelling like a movie that he had seen recently, and he would change the names of the characters because we would be watching a movie and be like, "Wait a second, this is exactly like that story that Dad told." And he did that with the movie Rambo, because that has Rambo and it had uh, Troutman was the name, and so he always called it was Pikeman, like Northern Pikeman, and so he told this whole story about Rambo, and so seeing that movie the
Except that
first time.
Rambo was named Sheepbo in his
Yeah,
story.
exactly. So I mean, but it was interesting seeing that, and I distinctly remember seeing the Rambo movies. I really remember the first time I got to see Braveheart, because that was one where it was just I think it was just Dad and me and my brother. I remember, and this is actually interesting because this actually was my mom who shared a dad movie with us. It was the first time I think I was 13 or 14, and it was the first rated R movie that I ever got to watch ever. And we were going through the movie and she said, "Oh, I think you guys are ready for this one." And I don't know if those were the words that she used, but we got to watch the movie Ghost in the Darkness, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. And it is
Mm.
that was terrifying. And it was actually in a way seeing it at that age was awesome because it was terrifying, but it highlighted the courage and the friendship between all the characters. The characters are all wonderful. Everybody in that movie is amazing, and so that was just like it had a huge impact on me. And then my mom, we were homeschooled at the time, and so it was within a very short period of time that she took us to the Field Museum in Chicago, and we got to see the lions and just realized, wow, that was a real story. I'm sure slightly embellished, although the narrator says the most unbelievable parts of that movie, those are the only parts that are true, apparently. But that was amazing, and then specifically, I remember Dad making us wait until we were 16, and he kept telling us he would show us the movie Dirty Harry, and so we watched the movie Dirty Harry, me, Evan, and a friend of ours, and I don't know why. I mean, that movie I don't think it's a scary movie, but it
We saw
terrified
that
us.
before you were 16.
Did we? Okay.
Yeah, we did.
Maybe. That's just how I remember it. One more that I'll
We
throw
didn't
out
see a
there.
lot of the movie,
Yeah.
but we
Well,
did
kinda
see it.
like I do remember, like, as a family watching Jaws and Dad jumping up in front of the TV 3 or 4 times, and we're all, like, trying to see what's going on, and I was scarred for life by that movie. I can't hardly swim in swimming pools as a result, but I did there was a specific memory, Andrew, when you kinda gave us this prompt that I remember. I think the whole family was on vacation up in Michigan, and I think me and Dad stayed behind, maybe because I had a baseball game or something. But, or maybe I can't remember, but it was kind of like I was alone, I was doing homework and he was working and he came home and said, "Hey, let's go see a movie." And I said, "Okay, well, this was before I'm sure the internet was around, but it wasn't like I wasn't aware of what movies were out." And so he told me the name of the movie and I remember thinking, like, what in the like, I don't have any idea what this is even about. The name seems so strange to me. And so we went and sat down in the movie that I had, and so going into this movie with zero idea of what I was about to see. And he just told me, he said, "I think you're ready to see this movie." And he said, "I want to see it. And so I want to take you to go see it." And we went and we saw the movie Black Hawk Down. And I had never seen anything like that before. And it's really, really rough. Uh, but I remember him telling me afterwards, because we went and we were talking, and he said, "There's something different between this movie or a movie like Saving Private Ryan and a movie like The Texas Chainsaw Massacre." He's like, "Both are very violent, but one is kind of glorifying violence and one is showing, how horrific violence is, and it's highlighting the courage that is needed in the face of such violence." And so yeah, it was a hard movie. That's not one where it's like, oh yeah, you're just enjoying popcorn and it's fun. But I just really remember that. And I remember him saying, like, "I want to go see this movie and I want you to come see it with me." And then I've got 74 more on my list, but I want to give you guys a chance to throw some more out there.
Well, it's fun, like, thinking because I'm not obviously a dad, but I have a dad who took me to movies and showed us movies, and so it's just, like, as listening to you talk, it's like there is something as a kid about those movies that you get to see with just dad, and even if they're not necessarily the movies that he would pick like, "Oh, yeah, this is the one I really wanna watch," but because it like with Black Hawk Down, where he was like, "I wanna see this, and I wanna bring you and see it with you." And so, like, for me, those movies were I saw Hunt for October in theaters. I think I was 6, right? Still a very dear movie to me. I had no idea what was going on when I watched it the first time, but I love that movie because I do have this vague memory of watching it in the theater with just my dad. He took me to see in college, he took me to see well, it was really funny. We went and saw Reign of Fire. That's another one that I just love because dragons and my dad. And then we went and saw Born Identity when I was in college. And it was very funny because that was not the movie that we thought we were going to see. And he got like the description of one movie that was out and the title of Born Identity like crossed. And so he was telling me what the movie was about. And then we went to see the movie. And about an hour in, we both kind of looked at each other and we were like, I don't think this is the movie we thought we were coming to see, but we both enjoyed it and it was great fun. So it was like, oh, this is more Mission Impossible than something with briefcases. I don't even remember what the movie was that we were thought we were going to go see, but I never did actually see that movie. But yeah, things like that. And I remember, you said Jaws, right? Jaws is, I think that's like a rite of passage movie in a lot of ways. Yeah, that was one that we saw. I know I was 9 because Brittany wasn't born yet. Our mom went on a vacation with her sisters-in-law down to Florida for like a week, and dad brought home Jaws, and I was 9, so that means Evan was 3, you know? But and yeah, couldn't swim in swimming pools for a while. But yeah, it's a milestone movie for me and one that's been fun with my kids. About 3 years ago, I Natalie was at camp and I was at our other brother's house with our 2 sons, and so Leanna, who was 13 at the time, was home with dad, and so Derek was like he called me and he was like, "Is it okay if Leanna and I watch Jaws?" And I said, "Of course." You know? It was, like, a little bummed that I was missing it, but, but yeah, that was, like, her thing, and so now Natalie's 13, and so she's got it in her head that that's the age and this is the summer. So it's like, "Okay, guess we're watching Jaws this summer," but yeah. How about you, Andrew? Any others?
Well, yeah, yeah. I just m- actually, Grant, what something you were saying, it's really kind of resonated with me a lot. Is like, yeah, I have, I'm not an ardent defender of the horror genre, but one of the things I'm a Roger Ebert used to say, I'm not a fan of romantic comedies or of horror or of action. I'm a fan of good romantic comedy. I'm a fan of good horror films. I'm a fan of good action films. And there are good horror films out there. And part of the appeal of them to me at least, because there's a lot of dreck in that genre in particular. And there are it's it's easy to go too far and to get too obsessed with it. I don't think I ever met anybody who was like really, really deeply into horror who I was like, that's not the best for you. But there are stories that you can't tell, or a better way to put it would be there are stories that you can only really tell in that genre. A story like Halloween, you know, Jamie Lee Curtis's character, it's like there is a type of courage that she needs that it's different if it's a thriller. It's different if it's, a different type of movie and stuff like that. And to bring it back to what you were talking about with movies like Black Hawk Down, which I also saw in the theater with my dad, and that was one of those where you're just going to learn about the geography of where I grew up. That was in Quincy, Illinois, which was about a 40-minute drive. And that was the other thing that was great about it, is then you had the drive home to talk about what you had seen and like, oh, what about this part? And some of it was talking about the cool parts and some of it was talking about when the guy the guy you thought was cool got shot and it's like, no, not him. But you learn life lessons from something like that, and you learn about, yeah, you said like the courage that's required in the face of those sorts of things. A great example I always think of is Saving Private Ryan, because we all I think it was just because I'm the youngest, all my siblings have moved out, so a lot of these memories are just my mom, my dad, and me. And we watched Saving Private Ryan, and I would have been 12 or 13 or so at the time. And it was a very impressionable age, because up until that point, World War II was uh, a thing that was in textbooks, and I knew something about, Germany, and I knew something about Pearl Harbor. Um, and that was really about it. And that made it added a degree of reality to that for me, and it stayed with me, like, in a good way. Like, it was if there's such a thing as, like, positive what am I trying to say? Being traumatized in a good way, that that was it, because you felt for these, again, you felt for these guys as they were going through this mission and as they were sacrificing for that. And I remember this was when Tom Hanks was campaigning to raise funds for the World War II memorial on the Washington Mall. And I remembered where I had seen an ad for it in the newspaper. And I remember rifling through our stack of newspapers trying to find it, because I was like, we need to give some money to this, because this is like, I understand now, this is really important. And again, it's like, it, it it's not just a movie that's dangerous for danger's sake. There's something that is, culturally shared with that. I think that's another point too of all this, is that it's not just me watching a movie on your own. It's a communal thing. It's you watching it with a family and sharing that together. That adds to it. And which is hilarious, because I'm normally like, the movie's on, sit down, shut up. I will I will throw angry glares at anybody who's talking in a movie theater. But the communal aspect is important in that regard. And again, you can't, when it comes to something grave and important like the content of Saving Private Ryan or Black Hawk Down, you can't get that in a PG Disney film. There is a weight to that that is important. So we've talked about the danger with this, and it's like, yes, danger, but good danger that's important to be shared in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the things that, as with my kids are starting to get a little bit older, and we haven't gotten quite to that point yet, but with some of these movies that I want to share with them, there's been a few times where it's uh where okay, I want to share this with them, but I love the fact that that idea of having that conversation or that drive where we can talk about these things. One of the first movies we watched that I think I hadn't seen it in so long, but we watched the movie Remember the Titans with the kids recently, and one of the reasons we watched it was because my daughter was playing basketball, and it was it was like the first year where the coaches were starting to, they weren't yelling at the kids, but they were being very direct with them, and it wasn't just oh ho hum and fun anymore. And so I wanted them to kind of get an idea of what it looks like when a coach is trying to draw the best out of you. And so I thought, oh, Remember the Titans. But having to realize, oh wow, there's a lot of themes in that movie that I just don't think had ever crossed our radar. And so just okay, well, this is an opportunity to talk about some of these things with our kids for the first time and to kind of almost do a little history lesson. But I love all of those elements, and I think there's it's the full spectrum, and especially, like, with our dad, like, some of the movies that we would watch would just be fun and just pure entertainment, but some of them would be, I remember my dad, and this was one that I don't know if he had watched it or not, but he sent it to me in college. He sent me the series Band of Brothers, and it was probably well known, but I was unaware of it at the time, and he just said, "I want you to watch this." And it was kind of during a time where I was feeling just kind of alone, but it was cool watching that, knowing that he was at home and that he would watch it. We would talk about the episodes, and there was just it felt like I was being invited into something. I remember one of his favorite movies. One of the things we were talking about earlier was your dad wanting to share something that they loved. And one of the movies that our dad told us about a lot of times, and shared the story with us. And he always liked books about mountain climbing or polar exploration. And there was a movie that he wanted to share with us, but he kept telling us, we got to wait till the time is right. And so it might have been a weekend when we were alone. I don't know if you remember this or not, but we watched the movie K2. Which was just a mountain climbing movie, and it was a little rough around the edges, language wise, and stuff like that. But it was again, and that was just kind of a little bit more on the on it was intense, but more on the, just action adventure side of things. And just I remember really being struck by that, and so struck by it that the next day we had these trees out in our yard, and my brother and I went and we found a big coil of rope, and my dad had these drywall hammers that to us looked like those ice adzes, and so we went out and we were like climbing these trees with ropes, and we could have climbed the trees with nothing in probably 5 minutes, but we made it this whole long thing of like, and just had this impact on us. Like, man, we want to do that. We want to experience what those guys experienced, and just that idea of yeah, those stories like stuck with us. So now I'm curious of the movies that were shared with you, or the movies that you've experienced on your own throughout your life. What are the movies that might top the list of the ones you're most excited sharing with your kids? And we've talked about a few of them, I'm sure, but maybe if you can think of any that you think are, oh, hey, maybe here's one that you haven't seen or one we haven't talked about. But movies that maybe you're not ready for them quite yet, but that you're really looking forward to. Like, man, this is at the top of my list of when my sons or daughters are ready. This is what I'm excited to share with them. Janelle, go ahead.
Oh, I get to go first. Okay.
You do. Well,
Awesome.
here I'll just give you a couple.
Okay.
I'm super excited to share the movie The Edge with my boys.
Mm.
We actually watched that movie in a Disciplines for Godly Man class, and our teacher Doug Scheidjanel, he sent home a form, and it was basically saying, "Hey, we're gonna watch this movie in a Disciplines for Godly Man class." It's an R-rated movie and it's got
Mhm,
this language, but he basically wrote out why he thought it was important to watch this
mhm.
movie. And like every parent could decide whether or not they wanted their kids to see this movie or not. But yeah, and that was that. But then I think of like some older ones that I would love to watch with my boys. The movie Where Eagles Dare with Clint Eastwood, and I can't remember who the main actor is, but I love that movie. I really love the movie Gettysburg, and that's one that I wanna share with my kids, and they could probably that one, it is intense, but it's not very graphic, but it's one that I want them to see at an age when they can appreciate it. Because my fear is that, oh, it's like 6 hours long, and so I want them to appreciate that. Um, I really love the
Are you
movies.
gonna sit down with them with Gods and Generals as well and just, like, do the full
Just a full we're gonna watch the Civil War, guys. We're just gonna watch the whole thing. Yeah, and, we started to watch, the movie I really loved, you know, the Russell Crowe trifecta of Cinderella Man, Gladiator, and Master and Commander. I think those came out at a time when it was just they were the most amazing movies I've ever seen. I remember seeing Gladiator in movie theaters, and I don't know if anything will ever match that experience. Even, in its own way, just it was on the same level as seeing Lord of the Rings for me. But those are definitely some of the movies that I want to share with my kids. And it's funny because I watch some movies now. Like we watched a movie the other night, and I was thinking, oh, they're starting to see some movies that are newer that are really well done and have amazing visuals. And I'm afraid that, man, if they see too many of these newer movies, like a new Star Wars, that by the time I get around to showing them these older movies, it'll be like when Dad shared the old Godzilla movies with us, and they will be like, "Yeah, this is lame." But Janelle, what are some movies that you're excited to share with your kids that maybe you haven't gotten to yet, or hasn't been the right time yet?
Yeah. Well, and it's fun because I was trying to think about it because since we do have a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old, we are getting to watch some of those movies that I have been excited about. Um, and just dragging the boys along, and it was funny. We did so we're in the middle of watching Interstellar just tonight. Like, it was a 3-hour movie, so we're not going to get through it in one evening because everybody will die. Um
You'll feel as old. You'll feel
natural
as old.
causes as as the characters are getting. Yeah. But no, it's been fun kind of getting to see how they are, but there was something, I don't remember what movie it was now, but uh they were talking the older kids were all talking about a movie that we'd watched, and Graydon was like, "What movie is that?" And we were like, "Oh, you've seen it, but yay, you haven't seen it. We can watch it again." Um but yeah, so yeah, Gladiator, definitely. The Ghost in the Darkness you talked about earlier, one of my all-time favorites, and definitely one that I don't think any of my kids are ready for, maybe Leona. Even just some things that are a little bit more on the maybe slower side, like The Martian, or, which, love that one. Again, that one's even a little bit newer. But yeah, I was trying to think, I was like, we have actually watched quite a few of the movies that I was looking forward to, like Jurassic Park, like, gotten through those, kinda working our way through the Mission Impossible series. We've only seen the first one so far, so, um, so I don't know if we're working our way
I don't
through
know
it
if
or we
that
just
counts as working your way.
managed to get everybody to, well, because Derek watched that with Leanna, and then they watched it again with just the boys, and we finally got Natalie to watch it, so now everybody has seen it.
The
So
first one's
that's
great.
kind of something that turns out that's just interesting how sometimes as all the kids are getting older, sometimes, we're watching things with just one of them, and then it's like, "Oh, the other ones have to catch up," but yeah, I was trying to think. Serenity, definitely high on the list of ones that we haven't gotten to yet, because I want them to enjoy it and not just be scared. Um,
That's a great one.
yeah, but yeah, like the ones that you mentioned, Grant, the Master and Commander, and yeah, those are the ones that I can think of. I'm sure that, like, one of you is gonna say something and be like, "That one too!" So,
For sure.
yeah.
How about you, Andrew?
Yeah. Well, Janelle, this whole conversation has been a lot of like, oh yeah, that one too. Like,
Yeah.
like Ghost in the Darkness was another one that, that my dad and I watched, and also then went to the Field Museum and saw those lions there and stuff. And
Awesome.
yeah, just any number of things here. So my son is 4, and he's not been to a whole lot of movies yet. He's my my sweet boy. He is he is filled with empathy, and that is going to serve him well in his life. But
Absolutely.
it means that a heightened emotion, it sets him off a bit. Like we had some friends over one time, and my friend had to scold one of his kids who was acting up, and then my son started crying because there was a strong voice used in the, just, not even directed at him, and it's not like a trigger for him. It's just he feels what he reacts to other people's feelings. And like I said, that's a positive thing.
Yeah.
It makes movies difficult to choose, because that is, the movie is by nature meant to heighten emotions. So we're
Absolutely.
picking our battles with that stuff now. Like, I just recently started watching the old Ninja Turtles, like the 87 Ninja Turtles cartoon with him, and it's like,
Yes.
okay, he's handling this. Okay, so like right now in the immediate, like my goal is to pick a time where we can sit down and like watch Star Wars together. Not like watch parts of it, but like sit down and take the whole thing in. That was actually another thing that my dad did, because my dad saw Star Wars when it first came out. He just went by himself because my mom didn't really want to go, and my brother was pretty young. He came home immediately and was like, "We're going to watch this again tomorrow, and we're bringing Jason because he needs to see this." And
That's
and
awesome.
so it's like he's at a good age for it. It's just, it's finding the time to sit down with that and all that. Um, yeah, I love you mentioned Cinderella Man, because that movie does not get talked about enough. It is such a good movie about,
Favorite.
it's not, it's a great boxing movie, but it's also like life, and you see James Braddock realizing what he's doing this for. It's not just about his own, I love that scene when they're, he's talking about like, well, why are you fighting now? It's like, milk. I'm fighting
Yeah.
because it takes care of my family.
Yeah.
Another movie in that vein that and we've talked about a lot of the same movies here, so I'm trying to kind of pull from the bucket of like, what else do I want to show my son when he's old enough? There's a movie called Warrior that is about UFC fighting. Yeah,
That's
yeah. Tom
amazing.
Hardy, um, Joel Edgerton, and they're both brothers who are in this UFC fighting tournament, and it's such a good, and it's the
Great
movie that
movie.
made me love Tom Hardy.
Yes.
And again, there are lessons about it, about brotherhood, about family, about forgiveness, about, how do you love someone even through their faults across the board, and about toughness, and about like, and again, it's not this fake toxic type of masculinity, this like faux alpha male stuff. It's like, no, like these guys have grit, and it's what are you fighting for? What is the purpose of your strength? Is it about building yourself up, or is it about taking care of those under your care? And it's such a great movie. I could watch it again and again and again and again. And yeah, yeah. I
100%.
I could come up with a whole list of other stuff there, but I'm gonna cut myself off there at Warrior.
Yeah.
Um
I
I yeah, I say that, and then I remember one of my dad's other favorites was a
Yeah.
movie called Frequency.
Yes.
You ever seen that one with,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
I love that
That's
movie.
such a
mhm.
hidden
I
gem of a movie.
Yes.
mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
Paycheck is
I
another one just thought of.
Paycheck. I've not
Paycheck?
seen that one.
Oh, that one's got, it's Ben Affleck
It's like
and
reverse engineering one, right? Where he has to kind of
yeah.
reverse
He's
engineer to
like
figure out
he's
what
been able to
happened to him.
see forward in time, and so then he's working for this, like, government thing, and he sees, uh, I don't know, I think basically that he's like, they're gonna try to get rid of him, and so he, like, sets this whole thing up where he sends himself clues, because his memory gets wiped. It's really good.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I see now I'm getting stuff I need to
There you go.
I Paycheck and Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Those
Yes.
those that's my
Yeah.
2 takeaways I'm gonna be looking up on,
Yes.
after this.
I
And
have.
the Three
Oh,
Stooges made Hercules.
that's right. The Three Stooges, anything Three Stooges or Abbott and Costello. Andrew, I had a question. One of the things that
Yeah.
that we talked about. This is something that I think, I don't think it's anything unique or earth shattering in terms of, but I've thought this, when Janelle was writing her first fantasy fiction series and we were reading it together, and it was something that has just kind of come to me like over the years of in terms of like, what do I love about these stories? And after you've just written this story that you've had published, I'm curious if you feel this way. And like I said, it's not earth shattering, but w- what I love and when I think of fantasy fiction that's done really well, it's like you have these worlds that are fantastical, or the characters are, or if it's whether it's it could be historical fiction too. But one of the things that makes it great and grounds the story is that the themes or the things the characters are going through are real. Like, for example, I'm reading Harry Potter to my kids, and Hogwarts is amazing. Like, I would love to go get the letter to go there, but the magic isn't what excites me about the story, and the fantasy world isn't what excites me about the story. It's kind of the setting, but for the courage and the friendship and those and just the good versus evil that's real. Like we all have the ability to be loyal friends the way Ron, Harry, and Hermione are to each other. And we all have the ability to choose goodness in the face of, sometimes horrific evil. And I love it when a movie or a story or a song does that, where it can create a setting for sharing those things in a new light or a way that really impacts you. And, when you talk about your son being empathetic, I love that. Well, I actually, I don't want to scare my kids, but I love it when, they watch a movie. My daughter in her class, they just read Old Yeller, and just, I love the fact that it moves them and that they feel enough to, because I do, it brings me to tears. And because it's hard, but it's beautiful. And life is hard, but there's a way to show that hardship in a way that draws the beauty out of it. And, there's nothing it's not Saving Private Ryan isn't beautiful, but the courage and the brotherhood and the what they're willing to go through to save one man, like that's beautiful to me. Um, so I don't know if there's a question hidden in there, but when you were talking about, those ideas, that's what it struck me with. And I'm curious in your story, uh, if you are weaving elements of your story or the things that you believe into the characters or the story itself.
Yeah, yeah. I think I mean, I and Janelle, maybe you can speak to some of this too. I mean, I don't think you can write a novel or tell a story without dumping some of yourself into it. Like, yeah, I mean, I suppose it's technically possible, but if you are trying to find themes that will resonate with a reader, then you will inherently find things that resonate with yourself first. And those are the themes that speak to your own heart. I referenced earlier that my dad's passed away, and I guess spoiler for some of Jill's books, the character I wrote, Eric, his father has also passed away. He dies in the course of the original 3 books. And it wasn't even like I want to dive into this theme. It was like, well, he's been fighting a war. He's had no time to process his father's death at all. And it's not even an overt theme. It kind of, in the way that grief does, it seeps out of Eric in different moments, and realizing dad's not here. And especially because his father had been the lord of the city, and now, oh, dad's not gonna be here to bail me out of this. I need to be the one. And there's that shifting of understanding. And I feel that a lot because, my um I'm trying to not make this really ultra sad, I promise. But my dad, he was not he never met my wife. He never met my son. And so there's been all these things as I was probably 22 when he passed away. So still, I was an adult, but still fairly young. And there's all these trials that a young man goes through in his 20s and into his 30s that times when I wish I could have called dad up and said, "Man, dad, what would you do with this?" And I've felt that loss, and that very much was transposed into Eric. There's a lot of other things that come into that, both with Eric being a father of a young child and being a husband, and even just the weight of trying to figure out what is the right thing to do in these moments. And again, this was nothing that, none of that was in the outline that I wrote. None of that was in the brief of like, um, you know, okay, how do we make a compelling love story with two characters who are already married? But it was in me, and so it went onto the page because that's just how I was working with it. So, and like I said, I think we all do that to some degree. We find the things that are resonant, that are important, and those, if you're trying to tell a compelling story, you will find those things and you will put those things into your story.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, everything Andrew just said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. Well, the reality is, I think we could probably keep going for another hour, and this has been a lot of fun. I would love to chat with you again, Andrew, sometime because this has been a lot of fun for me. The last question that I would like to ask, and you can explain it or not, but one movie that you can't wait to share with your kids that you'd kind of consider in this same vein that might be that, like, oh yeah, maybe this isn't a great movie, but I really like it. And for me, that movie will always be The Rock, with Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery, which is actually, I don't know if you've seen the video of this, there's a high likelihood that that is also a James Bond movie. But but I love that movie. The first time I ever saw it, I saw it on TV, and I didn't realize that there was such a thing as a TV version. And so I was all excited. I told this is one where I was like, "Dad, we've got to watch this movie, The Rock, because it's awesome." Brought it home, realized, oh wow, this is really rough around the edges. But it's one of my favorite action movies of all time. I think it's one of the most quotable movies of all time. I'm a huge Nicolas Cage fan, all of his overacting. And so I'm a big fan of his other crazy movies like Con Air and Face Off that I will not recommend as family movies.
No,
But those would be
that's
on
okay.
my
I can love
list
them
of, like,
anyway.
but I'm curious if you guys have any movies that are in that vein of like, yeah, these don't fall into that category of a lot of the movies we've been talking about, but that we are kind of excited to share with the kids for any number of reasons.
I'm gonna stall while I think by
Yeah, no worries.
apologizing that I'm turning away from the camera because
No,
I
you're
have my
fine.
DVD shelf right over here, and so I keep like as I'm trying to think of other stuff, I'm like, what do we got over here? We
Yeah.
got
I don't
hallucination.
Yes. I don't think anyone has to apologize ever again for something like that because one of our last guests, our brother, was folding laundry the entire time. So
He was. He was.
so you can do whatever you want.
Whatever. We
Oh,
don't
I
stand on
didn't. I've
ceremony
got some
here.
dishes downstairs. If that would have added
Oh,
to the to the texture of the podcast,
You could
it
have.
would. It would. Like
Uh,
we are working and we are cleaning and we are podcasting and
it's
it's
all about
no,
multitasking for
trying to
sure.
think.
oh
What do you think,
man,
Janelle? Any movies that
Ah, I mean, Derek and I were just talking about The Rock the other day, and I was like, "Oh, yeah." There have been times because I don't think I've ever actually seen the not TV version. So
well,
I know that there
prepare
have been
yourself.
times I know there have been times where I've quoted that movie, and you've been like, you can't quote that particular part of the movie, Janelle. Just don't." I'm like, oh, um, but well, I mean, this isn't a movie though. Hmm.
It could be whatever you want.
Okay.
I love the movie The Outlaw Josie Wales. That's one that's on that list, but
Oh,
I actually
that's a
think that
good
one
one.
I don't think that's a guilty pleasure. I actually think if
No,
you
that's a
listen
great
to
one.
the last lines in that movie when Josie Wales is talking to 10 Bears and he basically is telling them like, "Hey, I came to live here or to die here, and we can do both. But I believe that we're men of honor and that we really don't have to go around butchering each other." And just the whole way that that whole end speech goes and the whole way the movie builds up to, there's a lot of funny stuff and rough stuff in that movie too. But I think that's a great one. I
Well,
can keep going down my list.
I
You
think,
guys,
until we come up with something.
Grant's got a few on there. He can stall for time.
That'll
I'm
that'll
about
full
I'm
on
about
list.
halfway through. I'm about halfway
Halfway?
through. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
I'm sh Well, the one that kinda comes to mind, and this is all your fault, Grant, but, Hot
uh-oh.
Rod, probably up there.
Yeah, that
But
one
but
is
that one
very
they have to
guilty.
watch with you and Uncle Evan.
That's one of those movies. It's kind of like Andrew. I don't know if because you mentioned Monty Python earlier, and Monty Python is an interesting movie because we watched that the first time I ever saw it. I saw it at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon with my cousin and my brother, and I remember thinking, "Oh, that was odd." But we watched it a couple nights later at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and it was the funniest thing I've ever seen from then until now. And from that day on, we've been quoting it incessantly.
Yeah.
So sometimes the frame of mind you're in, I think, plays a role in how you
Yep.
enjoy a movie.
All right, I have a quick story I want to share with that
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
it's hysterical, and then I will come to my pick because I've
Oh, yeah.
landed on one. But I
Awesome.
Monty Python was my oldest brother Jason. He whenever his kids would ask about a movie that was either like on the shelf or that they heard, like they had like, and I don't know how scientific this was, but it was like a tiered system of yes, we can watch that, or you have to wait till high school, or you need to watch that in college. And it was basically like there was kind of, the more breakdown than that, but that was kind of how it went. And Monty Python was, I think that was a you need to watch that in college movie. Um, until my niece got sick on Thanksgiving Day, like as they were all getting ready to travel to my mom's house, was we were gonna gather up. And so her um condolence, that's not the right word. Oh gosh.
Consolation?
The consolation, thank you, thank you. It's I always need an editor. Her consolation was getting to sit on the couch and sip tea and watch Monty Python, even though she was a sophomore in high school, and watch that with mom. It was just kind of
Nice.
the like, I know this sucks. Here, let's bend the rules here just a little bit, and you can watch something just utterly ridiculous. And I feel like, I mean, and you're talking about the 1 a.m. thing. I don't know, like sick and watching, especially if it's Holy Grail, like that's a great mindset to to
Yes,
watch that one with.
yes, it is.
Um,
Yes.
I I have very few things that I consider guilty pleasures because maybe it's because I studied film in college, but like I can rationalize my like of just about anything I watch. But the eh, especially for sitting down with my son, watching the live action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles films, like
Oh,
that,
yeah.
as we've been talking, I've realized, like, yeah, that's a goal of mine because I'm those films are just bathed in nostalgia and rose tinted glasses for me. Like and even because I know like some people are like, oh, the second one's weird because it gets all family friendly and it's goofy and they don't use their. It's like I don't care. That was the first Ninja Turtles movie. Like I'd seen the cartoon and then I saw that and was like, whoa, this is the coolest thing ever. And so, especially now that I've started, bringing my son up in this, it's like one day, someday, we will sit down with at least the first two movies. Watch the original movie and Secret of the Ooze, and just be like, buddy, let's get some pizza, let's get some
Love it.
Pepsi, and let's dive into this.
I love that. I love that. That's
Oh, that's
awesome.
great. I
Yeah,
was
that's
just
awesome.
glancing because you have your videos behind you. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna pull up Plex and see what are the movies that we haven't watched that I'm, like, looking forward to." It's like, "Oh, yeah, Stardust." That one's on my list
Oh,
because
that's a
we
good
tried to
one.
watch that one with my
Love
children,
that movie.
and after about 30 seconds, they were begging us to turn it off because they were terrified, and this was only, like, 2 years ago. Um
I love that movie.
Oh, but like Silverado, which I think
Yes.
they'll love, but will be, it's a little bit more adult. Seabiscuit, Equilibrium.
Yes.
Equilibrium
Agree.
is one I'm very much looking forward to watching with my kids someday
Absolutely.
because, it's The Matrix, but better.
100%. 100%.
It's the Matrix, but with Batman.
But with
That's
Batman.
right.
And
That's
kind
right.
of a Fahrenheit 451 thing going on. I don't know. It's great.
Yes. Yes. I love it. I love it. Well, like I said, we have probably plenty on my list
Oh, yeah.
to do
We haven't
another
gotten through yours.
episode sometime. Yeah,
Love to
absolutely.
have you back, Andrew.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. We could do like mom movies or something like that. Oh, we'll figure it.
Yes. Yes. Well, that would be The Sound of Music because
That was
if
the only movie I think
mom
our mom
ever
had
gets
seen.
if we ever allowed mom to pick, that was the pick every time. And I actually love that movie. So
Yeah, it's a good one.
that's right. Well, this has been a lot of fun. And Janelle, you can go ahead and wrap us up. Before we wrap up, Andrew, let us know where we can find your new book, Lord of Winter. And I really encourage you guys out there to go and check it out. But Janelle, go ahead
Sure,
and
sure.
send us on out after Andrew tells us where we can find his book.
Yeah. So Lord of Winter, it is available. It is available through Sunrise Publishing. And so it's available on Amazon. It is Amazon through ebook. It's available directly from Sunrise Publishing's website. I should have a link for it on my website. My IT guy is a bum, and so I have not gotten those links set up yet. But if you go through either my publisher's website or Amazon, you'll be able to get a hold of it. And like I said, it is also available on audio. So Spotify, Audible, all the usual means. If you want to request it at your library, that's actually a low-key way of, helping pump our numbers, because then it's showing that there's interest outside the normal patterns and all that. But yeah, Lord of Winter by Andrew Swearingen and Jill Williamson. It's available wherever you find great books.
Awesome.
And you said you have a website?
Yeah, andrewswearingen.com. Like I said, it's pretty
Cool.
spare right now. I have a buddy from church who works IT, who I've been meaning to just like, look, I know that I should be able to understand this stuff. All the ads say Squarespace is really simple. Apparently I become more of a dad every year, and technology evades me. So I need to bug him about that. But
Well, I
yes, and
I was gonna say I really enjoy your Instagram page.
oh,
Stuff you put out there, so that's actually highly entertaining.
Yeah.
So
well, there you go. Look me up on my Instagram at Andrew Swearingen author. And I mostly do my stuff on Instagram, although I do have stuff on Facebook as well.
Yeah. Well, and as a plug for your book, I haven't read anything by Jill Williamson. It's been on my list forever to read something by her, and I haven't. But I did pick up your book and started reading it
Oh,
Saturday night, and I'm through chapter 5 because life. But usually I read faster than that. I was like, oh, I could read this
Janelle.
before Monday night, but no, it didn't happen. But I got through I stayed up way late last night and got through like the first 5 chapters, and I'm absolutely hooked. And I know nothing about the world, but I didn't feel like I was missing anything, which was, when I was looking at, I was trying to figure out like, okay, is this part of a series? Is it not part of a series? But I didn't feel lost at all. And really super strong writing. Like I am very impressed that this is a debut novel, and really love the characters already. And I'm going to head out here in a minute and go back to reading. So highly recommend
well,
so far.
well, thank you, Janelle. That's kind of you to say that, and I'm proud to have my first confirmation that I've kept someone up past their bedtime reading the book now.
Yes, I definitely should. This is what happens when my husband goes out of town on business. I stay up late reading because nobody's there telling me, hey, go to bed. So, anyway,
Awesome.
thank you so much for coming and chatting with us, Andrew, and to all of you watching or listening. Just thank you so much for coming out of the storm with us and spending some time here in the Storm Cave. We'll see you next time.